Alright, so good evening. Thank you all for coming out, and welcome to the second in this year's GSAS lecture series, which is a new program we've just launched this year, bringing newest and brilliant voices from across the games industry and the world of game studies here to RPI. This series is supported by a generous grant from the state of New York's NYSTAR division of Empire State Development through the Digital Gaming Hubs, which is dedicated to raising and supporting the games industry and game development community here in the state of New York. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker tonight, Rachel Presser. She is a game developer, a freelancer, a business consultant, a tax expert, the author of the definitive guide to taxes for video games. And she's here to talk to you tonight about how to start and hopefully how to sustain a successful business as your own indie game studio. Now I know we work in a complicated and ever-changing field. It's a complicated and ever-changing world. You'll hear a lot of people say, no one really knows what's going on in the world of indie games right now and how to succeed there. And nobody really knows what's going on in the world of games overall in the industry. Certainly nobody knows what's going on in the world of taxes and tax regulation. Just like one of those things that you probably don't think about until you suddenly wake up in the morning and realize it's really important. So here to explain all of those things to you tonight is Rachel Presser. And I just want to mention also this is a presentation tonight in two parts. So there will be a lecture component and then a workshop component afterwards. I believe there will be pizza out here at some point in the evening as well. Let's see, and this will be a participatory talk, so if you have questions, if you have comments, please feel free to raise your hand and jump in and be part of the conversation. So thank you, and welcome, Rachel Presser.
Good evening, how's everyone doing?
Very good.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, so thanks for having me up here at Rensselaer Polytechnic. Very excited to give a talk tonight. So the workshop portion that we're going to be having up on the screen is going to come till later. But just to start a little introduction about myself, in case you're wondering, why I'm here, why I'm qualified to talk on these topics. So long before there were game design programs in schools and the like I was just chatting with Ben on the way over here. I was a comp sci major at first until because I thought that being a programmer was the only way to get into this business. I had no idea, of what was going to come with the whole indie developer culture that was currently brewing at the time. The word indie developer wasn't even used every day. No, as you can see from this slide, I spent my youth, which I don't have anymore, on accounting degrees. At that time I earned 2 degrees in accounting. I'm what's known as an enrolled agent, which if you're not familiar with tax law terminology, it means I'm licensed directly by the IRS to represent taxpayers. I haven't really practiced in a couple of years now, but I'm still licensed. And I use that knowledge to write the first and only tax law guide meant just for game devs. And in that time as well, I also served Himalaya Studios as a chief financial officer from 2011 until this past year, excuse me, where I decided to focus full-time on my other company, Sonic 2 Media and Consulting. I've also been teaching business workshops with Playcrafting, which if you ever down the city or you're going up to Boston, also got a lot happening on San Francisco. Playcrafting is a really cool space, with a lot of options, to showcase your work, meet other game developers. You're going to hear me talk more about that later because I find those types of spaces is going to be really important for, not only for your success, but even just figuring out what exactly you want to do with your career. So I'm also working on a game called Clam Chowder Hub Run, which I will tell the origin story to that game later if there's time, because that is an extremely long story. So with all that said, so this portion of this evening's event is going to be more participatory because there's a lot of things that have changed over time, and I kind of don't like even the word lecture because you don't just want to sit here listening to me rant all night. I want to hear about your concerns. I want to hear your questions, because the world's always going to be changing, you know, and I think that change comes at a much faster pace than it definitely used to. Case in point, when I was your age, I know I'm about to sound really old right now. When I was your age, and first first going to school and everything, the phones we have now are more robust than the computers I was trained on. And then give that another 4 or 5 years, and then you'll be saying the same exact thing. We're definitely dealing with change at a much quicker pace than we used to. And so with that said, I think that the theme of like tonight's participatory talk is going to be about change management, and especially where game developers of all stripes really come in with that. We need to be adaptable to change if you want to, not if you want to succeed in this business, but just succeed in general, because getting comfortable in the same place is kind of dangerous in this field, if you want me to be perfectly honest. Case in point, it wasn't that terribly long ago when you could have a studio like Himalaya, the one that I was at the helm at for a couple of years. We had a pretty decently sized following. We used to get some pretty good buzz going in the media, and there was a time when a studio like that could put a game out on Steam, and then that used to be basically your guaranteed meal ticket. Any developer knew that they made it once they got onto that platform. And then a couple of years later, along came Greenlight, and then suddenly we have to focus all these resources onto not even just so much marketing the game, but just have to focus so much time on constantly trying to get people to vote on it, to bring attention to that page, to also tell other developers, tell our fans, and why this process existed, why it suddenly became so important to us. And then it really did disrupt things, because what used to be basically a guaranteed placement, a guaranteed meal ticket, was now no longer a thing. And then now you see what Steam basically became. And then you have Steam Spy or things now that, it's not the guaranteed meal ticket that it was. And a lot of developers really did get hurt by this, and then they had gotten comfortable with that model, and then they didn't really adapt to the ensuing changes too well. But distribution, comes and goes. The whole business models themselves also come and go, because one thing that we're also dealing with right now, especially if you really want to go independent opposed to, say, working for a publisher, is that there's also this pretty problematic and unavoidable aspect of even knowing how to price your own game. When you have this culture of people constantly waiting for games to go on sale, for instance, or waiting for it to go in a bundle, it does make it increasingly harder to make a living while being an independent developer, and then using also your own game as your main source of income. It's also becoming increasingly more difficult to just go that route. And so, you can either try to resist this change, fight it back, or try to find some other ways that you can make a living. That was actually what Sonic Toe completely focuses on. So hey, my second business is pretty much born of the constant need to adapt to change. Some other changes that we're also currently dealing with right now is that we're at a pretty scary and exciting moment in the gaming industry's history, because our industry is really not that old in comparison to others out there. It's also not that big if you really sit down and think about it. There's an influencer you may want to look up right now or after this talk, whenever. Don Daglow, he gives a lot of talks at GDC, other events. Attends some wonderful talks by him at this year's GDC, which if you have access to the vault, definitely look it up. He made a statement that I constantly repeat just because it's true. He says that games are an enormous business, but a tiny industry. And it is a very tiny, insular industry. I think it is something that is slowly changing as like I mentioned, we're at a very exciting moment in history right now where games are slowly starting to gain more legitimacy as a medium. And this has both a lot of, amazing, it has both like a lot of like amazing, consequences, but also there's some drawbacks to this as well. And one of the things that we're currently, seeing as games are gaining more legitimacy, like, they're not just being like, seen as something frivolous for entertainment anymore, is that, you are starting to see, as the industry expands, as game devs are really expected to take on, different roles like than they had in the past, is that we're also starting to like, definitely do see a lot of people like losing, I think, their passion as a result, and when you're suddenly, having to like, make games that are more, for like a different purpose than you had in mind, or this project didn't go entirely, in your vision, and I think we are starting to see more of that, but then, on the other hand, though, you also are starting to see, more opportunities, to like, put yourself out there, gain the experience you need, to be able to work on the projects that will go more in your vision and how you plan them to. I mean, case in point, like when I first had, like my dream of going into games when I was a lot younger, when I was, when I was first playing on Macintosh System 7, there I just gave away my age right now. When I was first playing, games on System 7 growing up, and like all the, seeing all these pixelated stories being told and coming to life, filling this dream of making adventure games of my own. I think it's safe to say I'm definitely not living that dream out, but that dream isn't dead. It just might not be manifesting differently because we're dealing with a pretty like unprecedented amount of change right now. And so on that note, it's also something that also just like really fascinates me to no end is just the simple fact that we have programs like this now. Once again, when I was your age, we didn't even have game design programs in schools. It wasn't even heard of, And even because even nowadays, while we're gaining more legitimacy as a medium, we're starting to get more recognition. Both the professional sector, other parts of like both private industry and the public sector are seeing the application in games, like they're seeing the whole enormity of this. In spite of all that, there are so many times like when I tell somebody that I work in video games, they give me that look like the kind of look you give a 5-year-old when they tell you that they want to be a mermaid when they grow up. And yeah, you're still going to get that. You're still going to get that. We're not quite at that part of it yet. So, yeah, so basically, we really got to be adaptable for change, because change is inevitable. We got to brace ourselves for some of the things coming. I'm actually going to veer the talk now in a different direction, which I expect I'm going to get a lot of questions on, and I'm ready to start taking questions any minute now. Because one of the things I've been getting a lot of questions on, both in person and over email, is that because of my background in tax law and the contributions I've made to the industry based on that experience, everyone's asking me about my opinion on both the tax plan that currently just passed in the Senate, along with the New York Digital Media Credit, which is expected to be a big boon to developers if that passes at the state level. And so the first one thing I just want to address really quickly, because I know there's been a lot of panic about this, like everyone's saying, indie developers are going to be finished because we're going to lose our deductions. The good news is that you're actually not going to lose all of them, you're only going to lose the one for the home office. And I'll take questions on that, if you have them. Another big thing about that whole plan is that the deductions they're talking about people losing are actually meant if you have a regular job and you have business expenses as an employee, that's going to go. And while these are terrible, and in my professional, political, and personal opinions, this plan is an absolute trash fire that shouldn't happen. Yeah, these are just so the changes that we gotta brace ourselves for. On a more positive note, because the industry has been gaining a lot more legitimacy, so Beck and I were actually just at that meeting about 2 weeks ago or so, give or take, with actually, with the, not the governor's office, but an agency with the governor's office, giving more feedback and input on the New York State Digital Media Credit, which is going to give an enormous boon to companies that, are going to make games, no matter what the purpose is. And I've been fighting to get independent developers represented in that bill, because I think that, we deserve some kind of tax benefit for taking the risk that we take. And even if the benefit's not going to be, like this enormous amount, as any developer who's going to basically be, like scrapping as hard as you can, if you get that extra $1,000 to buy a new computer, or pay an artist for some new assets, that can sometimes just be all, like that last push need to get a game out. So know that I'm fighting for you pretty hard up here in Albany. So with that said, I now want to turn the talk to you guys. I want to know what kind of questions that you have, what kind of insights you're looking for on change management, the industry, any of that stuff before we get to the workshop portion of this evening. Yes?
When you talk about being accustomed to changing and fixing your habits, what habits are you referring to? Are you talking about development habits, publishing habits, marketing habits?
It could basically be anything. One thing I would definitely like not get too comfortable with, not so much development habits, but rather like getting too comfortable with like the business model of things. Because like I mentioned, I keep bringing up Steam because like when I was first, starting to do this full time, about 5-6 years ago, yes, Steam was still a guaranteed meal ticket, if you were going to go indie. Getting past their curators was like seen as this like enormous feat. Nowadays, it's really the complete opposite. Like Steam's been overrun with all kinds of stuff, and it's definitely not, the guaranteed living that it used to be. And then prior to Steam, you also really had to like bet everything on like, putting a game together, trying to get it published, and then that was also something that had extremely low success rate. But there were a couple of people who still, who could still, get by doing so. And nowadays you have I think you have like far more options, for getting a project out the door than you used to. But on the same token, you also don't want to get too comfortable, with one distribution model or one business model, because you just never know how quickly that could change. Yes.
It seems that, of course, the big challenge for any indie developer is getting the marketing side of the business working correctly.
Yes.
And of course, the whole business of cutting through the clutter, especially on mobile, but even not mobile, like on Steam. What works and what doesn't when it comes for an indie developer to say, you've got this game idea, how do we get people to find out about it?
That's a very good question. And there's definitely no magic bullet solution for this, because marketing is also something that constantly evolves. As someone who also like has like, I have like one foot in the marketing world actually, that I do a lot of stuff with content marketing, content strategy, like something that like I see a lot in bridging the gap between like that world and like the game dev world, is that something I think that is definitely changing now, is going to continue to evolve, is that people overwhelmingly hate the feeling they're being sold to. And I think that like for indie developers in particular, because there's just so many more games out there now, because games are being used in so many more applications, it's not like it was like even just like 10, 15 years ago, you just say, hey, we got this cool new indie game, you should check it out. It was a novelty like over a decade ago. Nowadays, it's just like there's so many people like competing for attention. We're facing the too many games phenomenon. And oh yeah, I think that, I mean, just like I said, just giving a professional opinion on this, I think that what indie developers have to do to really like rise above all that noise, like be prepared for whatever changes coming, is that you just really gotta like get at the grassroots, which actually is what indies do best. Because something I definitely hear a lot from other game devs, both from like the people I teach at Playcrafting and just from like buzz around the industry in general, is that a lot of them get like very worried that they don't have a lot of money to pump into marketing marketing. And it's not so much like, you don't need a massive advertising budget. It's like AAA, it's gonna rely on advertising more than us. What you do have to put more resources in is just the actual like grassroots stuff, like talking to people at conventions, like getting a booth at PAX, getting a booth at like the Playcrafting expos, talking to people on social media. Because one thing I could definitely say from like having like overseen both my studio's crowdfunding effort, having overseen other studios' crowdfunding efforts, see this stuff evolve over time, is that you're gonna do a lot better if you have like 500 super engaged, hardcore fans who love what you're doing, they will spread the word for you. You want that more than you want a PR firm reaching out to like 10,000 disaffected people who are getting inundated with the same message every day. I hope I answered that question. Yes.
How valuable is it, do you think, to have a publisher, even like an indie publisher, or a so-called indie publisher, like Devolver or something like that?
Oh, well, actually, indies funding other indies is starting to pick up traction. You don't have to work with like a big publisher. There are some smaller ones cropping up. I'm going to talk a little more about publisher deals in the workshop portion. But to answer your question, I mean, it does have its advantages, like you will have like the resources, like say for marketing the game. I guess I know that marketing is often like the big thorn on like any developer sides, like when your resources are constrained, you may not have like the specific knowledge, for building a fan base and getting the word out. And then the publisher does take a lot of that strain off of you. You'll also benefit like from the publisher's experience in working with, with other smaller developers. Both in like the business end of things, like and the development end of things, like they may give you access to resources like that you either didn't have or that you may not have thought of. So, because I know that like a lot of indies, may not like the prospect of working with a publisher, and the pitching process, can get very time consuming, onerous. You're thinking like, hey, why did I bother with this when in that time I could have worked on this myself? Once again, there's no like magic bullet answer there, but those are some of the advantages, to think about. Working with a publisher isn't always going to be this terrible, restrictive kind of thing. Because you're benefiting from their resources, from their experience, their contacts in the industry. That's another big one. If you haven't really developed like a lot of your network yet, a publisher can definitely be a big help there. But once again, every publisher is different, and so some of them may not be so generous with those resources and others will. Yes?
So you already partially answered this question, but so I was working on a financial model to see kind of like an estimated income statement for depending on like how much capital that I would need in starting the company. What do you think are the most important things that a company starting out would need to spend their finances on, like in regards to like legal fees, accounting, company insurance, things like that?
No, that's an excellent question. Obviously, I think that like the top one you need to worry about when it comes to making a game is that paying people is the biggest one, an absolute biggest one. Namely, like how much like are you paying yourself so that you're not totally constraining your time, either with a job or, in my case, the second business that wound up ousting my studio I initially had. Hey, I like this path, but I get that that's not what everybody wants. So I'm happy doing some dev on the side and really bootstrapping the hell out of it. But if you want to focus on this, get some external capital, like an investor or a publisher, paying people is going to be that biggest one. You obviously definitely want to set aside some resources, for professional fees, legal and accounting, marketing, making sure that you're investing, in your branding efforts properly, having someone to manage social media, all that jazz. That still falls kind of under the same umbrella as paying people.
Yes.
But especially just developing the actual game itself is just really the biggest one. Making sure that people are being paid, they're being paid on time, and you're not being subjected to any lawsuits. That's your top concern in getting that budget set. Paying people and then making sure you got enough time. Those people being paid. Yes, yes, sir.
A lot of free-to-play games and mobile gaming over time have really discouraged players in the last couple of years from outright paying up front to a one-time purchase for a game rather than like a microtransaction model or
Yeah.
something like that. How do you feel the industry or new developers can combat this and make a single-time purchase game?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Yeah, I think that the free-to-play model definitely, like, as much as I don't like making a statement, it disrupted things for sure, because that model was actually carrying over outside of games. You now have the whole software as a service industry kind of sprouting up from it. I personally am not a fan of the whole microtransaction model. Then again, this is because, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little biased, a little old school here, because I remember what it was like when you paid for a game once and you were finished. That is what a lot of indies, I think, are trying to make things go back to instead of the microtransaction model. But on the other hand, though, it's also just that, like, for the people like who play those types of games, where you download it for free, then you have the microtransactions later. It's just also a different, like, type of player than the kind of person who would be, say, drawn to like an independent game that's just got the classic you pay once and you're done model. I guess I just see it as something like not that different than, say, just like how there's different markets for different types of movies or different types of books, for instance. The big difference here is just in how you pay for it. It's just more, I think it just more or less is a matter of, like, if you're gonna put a game out, like, you don't want to go the microtransaction route. It's a matter of, like, finding the right platform for it, reaching out to the right type of audience to make sure that you're not gonna, like, inadvertently try to market the game to the people expecting microtransactions. That's not what they're getting. I hope I'm making sense there. Yes.
How about the other end of that with things like loot box, the whole business going on with the majors, where you think you bought a game and you really didn't buy the whole game yet. And there's quite a bit of a recoil happening to that right now. I'm wondering, it almost seems like the way for indie is to steer a middle path and say, we're being honest and upfront with you. You pay X, you get the game.
Yeah.
There's no microtransactions, there's no hidden DLC you have to, like, grind to and all that. You get what you pay for.
Yeah.
It seems almost like that's, with the majors making fewer games than ever, but Activision's down to 4 now this year. And that kind of thing, they're just trying to, like, really screw us out of the money. And the microtransaction thing is like screwing us the other way. So is there a message there that can be built out of that for indies?
I definitely think so. I mean, I think that there's a big opportunity for any developers to, like, say, either we're going to keep doing things the old way, or you'll find maybe some other, like, some new kind of monetization model that yet it is purposely based on, well, to be put bluntly, not screwing people. And because I know the loot boxes are a very hot button issue right now. There's, like, a lot of people, I think, who are properly, like, really steamed about this. And there's, like, regulators even stepping in, saying, like, hey, this does constitute gambling, or this part doesn't constitute actual real money gambling, when you're buying all these loot boxes. Because what it really boils down to is that, like, indies are also, like, I think, like, the big risk takers, because, excuse me, because when you don't have, like, all, like, your whole, like, reputation, like, riding on, like, this one IP, the way that, like, Activision, EA, and the like, just, like, have it all riding on a couple intellectual properties, when you either, like, don't have much of an audience yet, you're just starting to cultivate it, then, yeah, it's like, it's pretty much like a hey, like, what do we have to lose type of situation, and then that does make you, I think, like, more, like, nascent to risk taking. Whereas, like, I think that, like, what the majors are doing now is that instead of taking risk on, like, new types of games, new intellectual property, they're just placing all, they're just placing all their bets on, like, trying to come up with, like, new monetization models that just milk the player for, forever they can get out of them. And I definitely don't think it's going to bode well for the future. So I think that as independents, like, we definitely have to stay ahead of that, just like focus on delivering a great game, focus on, building an audience that really cares, because that is one advantage, that we do have over the majors is that, we can put that more personal touch on it that they can't. Yes.
Yeah, sort of follow up on that. Can you talk a little bit about like strategizing or balancing between broad appeal and niche in a way? Like, if you're trying to think about how to get your game, have visibility and find an audience there, how much to try to make it something a lot of people are going to like versus trying to make it something that maybe is targeted only at a pretty specific group of players who are going to be interested in that kind of game. Like where that's okay and how you make that balance.
Yeah, so I think what like strikes the balance is that, well, first things first, I mean, you should definitely only make a game that you're really passionate about, because when you're just trying to look at like what's currently making money right now, what you're expecting is going to be like the big trend or so in the coming year, remember how long it takes to make a game, how long it takes, just to push it out the door, and also when you're independent, how you're working with much more constrained resources, and say if you're working with a publisher or you're working, with a AAA developer who's got those resources. When you're just trying to make a game for money, I mean, then like you're not really going to be communicating with much passion to your fan base, and then trying to also have use that as a broader appeal. Run some ad campaigns, get a publicist to like spread the word for you. How are you actually going to make that also like rise above all the other game advertising currently out there? Because we live in a very, very busy world, in case you haven't noticed. We're kind of bombarded with ads everywhere we go, in meat space, online, we kind of can't avoid it. And, so when you're trying to have a broad appeal, that's like a very big challenge, one where the major players like Activision and so on really got the advantage over us because they have the money to sink into getting as many eyeballs like on those banner ads, on those trailers as possible. And an independent developer who's like, working with an incubator, maybe working with like an investor for a small amount of money is definitely not going to be putting funds into something like that. Whereas like when you're trying to get more of a niche following, that really is, where you do have to take on more of like the grassroots approach to building a fan base and to getting people interested. Ultimately, what this really boils down to is like making a game that you're really passionate about, looking at the aspects of the game, such as the subject matter or what style the game night is, or like what has and hasn't been done before with your particular game, is that you have to pretty much like pinpoint like which those aspects like would get somebody really interested. How can it also get the attention of the press, for instance, because that's also going to play a big role in whether you can get a broad appeal, whether it's just going to have like a more cult following, more or less, and yeah, this is a very fickle and hit-driven business, and so you can have a game that's meant to have a very broad appeal. It doesn't take off, but then you have something else that then just like winds up becoming like a viral hit. Like a lot of people didn't expect like Cuphead to go completely viral, for instance. Like there's been a lot of games like that where sometimes like all it takes is just like some Let's Player with a very big following who picks the game up, or like some famous person just stumbles across it by chance. You never really know. Yeah.
So that creates sort of like another, I know a lot of pressure that I hear about from a lot of people, which is, so like at one point in time, the only way you could get your game published and succeed would be if you got a deal with Activision or EA or something like a big publisher. And now I think there's a perception that the only way you can succeed is if you get your game picked up by a YouTuber, like a particular small group of influencers, I guess.
Yeah.
So is that really true? Like, is that what it really all hinges on? Is that the make it or break it thing, or are there other ways of getting publicity?
I don't
It's
think
kind of like a crapshoot. Like it's a random thing. Like if that's
it definitely can be. I mean, I don't think once again, I don't think it entirely hinges on it. What I think is like going to be like the more like surefire way to like ensure your long-term success is to do that grassroots, fan base building. Because even if like, yeah, you have like, a bunch of like really hardcore fans that like constantly, share your work, they're like spreading the word for you. Because by the way, that's really what differentiates a follower from a fan. And that like someone who just like follows like your studio's account on social media, or like has like, they might be on your mailing list, they'll have some kind of like cursory interest in what you're doing. That's a follower. A fan is someone who's like super excited to see your game come out. Like they're telling other people about it. And that's who you want on your side. And that's who's going to ensure your long-term survival. Because they'll be there for you, in most cases, like no matter what kind of Let's Player picks up the game, whether the press is gonna like treat you like one of their darlings for a bit or not. I think that grassroots like fan base building, it takes more time, and I know that like it's something. Sorry, I have bronchitis, that's why I keep stopping to cough every few minutes. Yeah, it takes more time, but it's definitely it's one of the most surefire things that will guarantee your long-term success. Definitely more than any PR campaign will. That's definitely what experience has shown me, along with talking to several other developers who made it in various degrees over the years. Do you have any other?
I got another one.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a ton of questions actually.
Okay.
So another one that I hear a lot, and this gets back to your answer about where to put your capital in
Yes.
the early stage, is where do you get that capital at the beginning? So before you've got your game published and have revenue coming in, where do you go to get some money to run your business, pay other people, or even if it's just you, pay your rent in the meantime until that comes out?
I have a whole segment about it in the workshop. I have several slides dedicated to that, because that is, I think even before marketing, that is always like the biggest thorn in, well, not just any developers, anyone who wants to do anything halfway entrepreneurial. That's like your biggest thorn in your side, is like, where's the money coming from? Am I going to be using my own money or other people's money? How am I going to pay it back, or what's the consequence of taking that money going to be? I have several slides about that in the workshop portion. I will be addressing that in depth, because I know that that's the big one.
How to get money?
Yeah, how do you get money? That's definitely one of the big ones, and I have a whole segment in the workshop portion on that. Yes.
You use the term surefire as if like, gee, this is guaranteed. We can guarantee that we can be successful. And game industry is show business. And so like anything else in show business, like perseverance counts for a lot. And but it seems like you're almost able to say in a way that with the right thinking and planning and attention to the details and attention to marketing and everything else, you actually can pull this off. And that quote anybody can pull it off if they do the right things. Is it that easy really? Or has it been your experience that those who are in fact pushing all the right buttons are in fact able to make a go of it most of the time?
I use the term surefire, but I'm sure as we're all aware, there are no guarantees. Things can change, because, for instance, okay, I got a reference meme here. This is a meme that may fly over some people's heads. If you practically live on Twitter like I do, you will know this meme. Has anyone ever heard the meme milkshake duck? Okay, all right, milkshake duck. Okay, so there's a popular Twitter.
Do you want to pull that up on screen? Is that...
Actually, I'm gonna go ahead. Actually, no. Do I have internet on here?
Oh, yeah.
No.
Yeah,
Okay, well, pull up your phone, look up milkshake duck. All right, go to knowyourmeme.com, or your internet culture encyclopedia of choice. A milkshake duck was coined by a popular Twitter account, which is basically like this account was basically lampooning when people like have like their 15 minutes of fame online and everybody adores them, and then suddenly it's like somebody will pull up something that this person said or did in the past that was either like extremely bigoted or really horrible or both, and so this account on Twitter basically said like, this is milkshake duck is amazing. 15 seconds later, we regret to inform you that milkshake duck is a raging racist. And there are some game devs who definitely have a milkshake duck moment. And yeah, because you never know if you're going like to say or do something that will anger your fan base. Like case in point, like I said, like, it's like the theme of like this talk was basically about change management. Well, here's one other aspect that's also definitely changed. So two simultaneous shifts that we also had, like, in recent years, is that while there's a lot more people who play games now than there used to be in the past, well, one thing that we have now as well is that the term gamer now carries a very toxic connotation with it. Oh God, it does. Because I remember, like, when I was in high school, when I was in middle school, being able to freely tell people, to some degree that I was a gamer. I don't say that anymore because it carries with it a really terrible connotation now. So you also have to be prepared for those types of cultural shifts. And sometimes, depending on, like what kind of like fan base, like that you've inadvertently assembled, they may not like some of the cultural shifts going on. They also may not like, the direction that you were taking business-wise or artistically. So yeah, there's never any like guarantees, but I still refer to like that grassroots fan base building as a more surefire way of like, ensuring that you're going to survive in the long term because like even if you have like say, just like selecting like 10 like random fans of like the people who be following you all this time, really excited about your work, and then say maybe like 3 to 4 then drop off over time because they don't like what you're doing now, or for God's sake you had a milkshake duck moment, explain what the meme means. And then you're still gonna have that 6 to 7 out of 10 left who will support you and they'll still be spreading the word about your work, taking what you're doing. And there's also, by the way, nothing like more motivating than like getting like that message or getting like that person who comes up to you at a convention and they're just like, oh my God, I can't wait for your next game, or like I was so excited to hear know that you hit this milestone. Like there's like very few things like that could possibly replace that, if anything. That's another like reason why that grassroots fan base building is extremely important, because you also really need that like morale boost, because whatever you do as a developer, you're still a human being and you're gonna have so many people out there in the world, who would look at you like you're nuts for doing this, like they don't get it. And or they'll call you like, just like a lazy watchdog because you want to make games instead of having a real job or whatever. You need that. You also need that. You need that motivation. You need to keep going. Do you have any other commentary? Yes.
So, what are the most important conventions for an indie company to exhibit at?
So PAX is definitely one of like the big ones. Like you're gonna have like the most attendance out of that. Same goes for MagFest. As I mentioned, I also do stuff with a company called Playcrafting. While they don't have any presence up in Albany or down in the city, you're gonna want to look for other like similar events, because like there's just so much more of them now. The big benefit you also have with like these like smaller like local like game development collectives, which by the way, if you want to find them, check out Gama Sutra, Game Career Guide. Even just go to meetup.com and just like look for stuff pertaining to smaller games conventions. The smaller conventions can help you get your feet wet for like the gigantic ones like PAX. Because if you're gonna be boothing like at PAX, oh boy, that's an experience. That's something you want to be prepared for, and have like a table. It's something like, there's like this thing I go to sometimes in Parsippany, New Jersey, called A Video Game Con, and that one's always, that's really cool. It's a lot of fun. It's geared towards like gamers themselves, like not developers. GameCon is one that does do both, and I haven't exhibited that one, I spoke there, but like, that's also, you know, like, a smaller convention that gets like decent attendance, which is also, good to get your feet wet. There's also an article on Thomas Intra. I said I can maybe find the link for this and send it to people later. One other developer on there wrote an excellent guide about boothing on a budget, and that's definitely something you want to think about, because like making that booth like an experiential component of the actual game will go a long way to like getting people interested, getting them talking. That's more effective than most PR campaigns. And yes, you want to start with some of the small local ones, and also having like that regular presence there. Yeah, it's really good for, like I said, that little grassroots side of things. And connecting with fans in person also has like really, like measurable long-term effects. Not to mention it's super motivating. Yes.
I guess looking at PAX specifically, so like MagFest is great because it has such a low barrier to entry. But when you're doing PAX, there's a bunch of different options you can do now, where you can either be with a publisher or you can like rent a kiosk effectively for a day.
I haven't looked into it in like forever.
Yeah.
So
So I guess what I'm wondering from that is how do you look at the larger ones, which are much significantly more expensive and are much harder to, like, if you go to the PAX site, it's very challenging to see how to get into a panel, like how to get into a booth. So what exactly is the workflow for, going into a larger exhibit?
the first thing I would definitely do is like talk to other developers who did it. I have a couple slides about networking in the workshop portion, which I'm going to get into a whole lot, some of that. You definitely want to talk to people who exhibited at like these bigger conventions, because some of them also know people behind the scenes and can help you get past some of the red tape. That's the big one. And then for other bigger conventions, like where you may also have to like split a booth with another studio, that can really cut down on your cost. If the organizer allows it, most of them will. I'm not sure what PAX does now, honestly, but I know that, yeah, there's ways you can get around those like onerous fees to rent space if you team up with another developer. And then you also, you benefit from like their visitors too. Yes.
Can I ask you about tax policy or tax strategy?
I don't think I have any questions about tax stuff yet.
Yeah. So this is also one that people don't really ask me a lot about, but maybe they should, because thinking about your tax strategy when you're starting off, I think a lot of people imagine that that's not really that relevant at the beginning. Like there's not that much that you can strategize about or take advantage of when you're first beginning.
I beg to differ.
And so it's like not even on your radar about like ways of like helping you get the ball rolling.
I'm so sorry. This is just coming from years of having practiced tax law. I mean, even though I have not been behind the desk with an IRS agent in a couple of years now. I haven't. And to be honest, I haven't even prepared returns aside from my own in recent years. But there are some old habits that die hard. One of them is that it is incorrect that it's involved in the beginning. Because every taxpayer is unique, everyone has a different personal and business situation. You definitely, even if you were making $0 right now, you don't know yet who you're going to start your development team with. Oh, that is all very relevant for tax planning purposes, because if you don't get started on that stuff in the beginning, you could be leaving thousands of dollars on the table and not know it. Like for instance, making the wrong choice of what entity to form, that can be a very costly decision. And one problem with this though, and this is actually where a big part of my consulting business was sprung out of, is that I would go on Gama Sutra and see some guest posts from other EAs and CPAs time to time, and I would just sit there going like this over and over again, because that was what prompted me to write my book. I'm not just sitting here hawking the book, by the way. It's just that, no, I put that together because I saw that there was a real dearth of resources, like for indie developers who are broke asses, who are starting out with like nothing. These guys are writing these articles for these studios, the AAA, or it's also coined now as III, which is like, you know, the indie studios that make it, you know, like well enough that they can afford to start paying employees regularly. They've got more clout, they've got like a real budget to work with. And that's like who they're dedicating these like pieces about the R&D credit to and other things. And I'm just sitting there going, these guys have not sat down and actually spoken to a real indie who's had to like, you know, bootstrap the development of their game. They're working another job or operating another business, you know, to support this. Like, they don't know the lifestyle aspects. And there actually are certain lifestyle aspects that do tie in with the tax component. Like, for instance, like there are various ways that you can like use your game dev costs. Like, if you set up the correct entity when doing this, there are actually ways you can technically use your game dev costs if you have like no money coming in, and not have to pay student loans because of the way your income looks like your taxes. And by the way, this is totally legal. This is just the kind of stuff that people don't think about because, you know, they haven't had like several years of practice and these laws drilled in their skulls like I did. And I wanted people to benefit from that, so I wrote a book about it. No, you definitely do have to consider things like taxes in the beginning, because unfortunately we live in a nation where our tax code, I forget what the exact figure was, I think it was something like 10.6 billion words long. It's onerous. And this trash fire plan that just passed the Senate, well, it's not good. Let me put it that way. It's really, oh God. It's not going to help us, let me put it that way. It's definitely not going to help the likes of us. And as I mentioned, I did address just some things at the beginning, because I know a lot of people were panicking, saying like every self-employed person is going to lose their deductions. We're only going to lose the one for home offices, which is kind of a big FU to us, but yeah. This is the kind of changes we do need to be prepared for, however we can. Yeah, yes.
So sort of talking about like tax things, one thing I've been kind of confused on as far as sort of structuring your team and like how the payments work. I know like, you know, if you declare like an LLC and that's like in someone's name, but then they're also like giving, you know, cuts of the money or something like that to people. They're getting weird rules about when people become like employees instead of independent contractors.
I'm going to have the whole thing on that.
Okay.
In the workshop part.
That's always really confusing as far as when you get an employee tax.
Yeah.
And when you, okay.
When you're an owner, or like versus like if you're just paying that person as a contractor, you're going to give them residuals. So I actually don't have a whole segment on the employee versus independent contractor stuff. I'm happy to discuss that in the Q&A because that actually is one of my areas of expertise. It leads into like labor law stuff a little bit, but like, yeah, I wrote my master's thesis on this back in the Stone Age. And I still get a lot of questions on this stuff. And yet I will hawk again. My book has a whole thing on this too. But yeah, I know that can get confusing. But yeah, I'm going to discuss it in the workshop portion, all about the different entities, you know, like how your team is going to be laid out. Because you don't have to make that person an owner if they don't want to be. But yeah, I'm going to get into that much later, because there's a whole like sea of knowledge erupting from that aspect. Any other audience participation? I see you almost had your hand up.
I've almost got my hand up, right. Kind of formulate a question in a way that makes sense. Maybe better for the workshop, I suspect.
Okay, yes.
Sorry, passing the time. We're seeing some AAA companies or even hardware creators like people like Nintendo and Sony and Microsoft starting to open up more doors to indie developers to actually put a game on, rather than go a mobile path or a PC path, actually release it on dedicated game hardware. And that's nice, and obviously we did see that from years past, starting with stuff like the Xbox Live.
Yeah.
But it seems that it's a little hard for people to do kind of right out the gate. Often I see a lot of people going with independent routes or things like PC and then considering more affluent deals, if you will, with actual hardware creators. Do you feel that that's a logical sense of progression for an indie developer, or should we start seriously considering trying to open an audience with bigger people right out of the gate?
I honestly think it depends. It depends on well, first, what type of game that you're making. It depends also on what your goal is as a game dev. What type of audience that you're seeking. Because for some people, again, really do it's like they either want to get into hardware development themselves, or they're trying to basically take advantage of the additional expertise and resources that a hardware manufacturer would have. Then it definitely does make more sense to start pursuing those types of deals out of the gate. And there are some devs who just don't feel confident enough in their craft yet, or in getting out there yet before they want to pursue those types of deals. But I think that they definitely do have their place in the industry now, and I think it's fantastic to also see newer developers angling for them now, instead of the old model of you have to wait until you get to this specific part before you start angling for a publisher deal. That was how the old model was. So I definitely think it's good that this type of thing is cropping up more now. Yeah. No worries. Yeah, go ahead.
We're starting, for a long time, some of the biggest countries for gaming have been, for game development itself, have been Japan and the United States. But we're starting to see different governments kind of open up a little bit to the idea. I know that Ireland or Scotland passed certain deals recently that made it more affordable for indie developers. I've seen people with John move over.
In Canada too.
Different studios opening up. What kind of countries should we be more aware of? How is indie development growing in other countries besides the big two?
Well, I know Canada has been poaching a lot of studios that were based in the U.S. because, this is more a concern for bigger studios rather than really small indies. But I know that the case in point, when I was still with Himalaya, we used to get a letter from the Canadian consulate at least twice a year. They kept trying to get us to meet with them at GDC. They have this whole enormous setup, with various tax breaks, rolling out the red carpet for bigger studios, trying to relocate more. I said this is more for bigger companies that already have people on the payroll. They're really trying to relocate those jobs up there. So I definitely would look to the Canadian model to see how they're succeeding with it, and that definitely was, as Ben can vouch, what we were discussing at the Empire State meeting the other week about why Canada and the US had such success in getting developers to migrate up there instead of staying in the States.
Oh, are we talking about Montreal?
About the different tax credit schemes. Because it really boils down to more the regulatory environment. And because as much as the US claims that it's pro-business, it does make things pretty damn onerous sometimes. Speaking to someone who has, I'm company number 2 now, I may be going to number 3 in 2018. And it does get pretty onerous. I can't speak to what it's like in Japan or some of these other countries, but I know that in Canada, it's not as draconian as it can be in the States. And I would definitely be looking to the Montreal model to see why they have successfully poached a lot of devs from here to there. Yes.
So for branding, approaching someone like a branding firm is incredibly expensive, and it was recommended to me for like startup companies to approach a freelance brand manager with like a good book. Do you think that's necessary, a necessary expense for an indie company, or do you think that like maybe approaching someone like in-house would be a better way to go about it?
I would definitely go the freelance route, because like when you're trying to like build, because like, so speaking as someone who has both like a foot in the marketing world and a foot in this world, like the branding aspect is like really not as crucial for an indie who hasn't like gotten those first 1 to 2 games out yet. You really want to focus like more on like the actual game, getting people interested in it, getting a logo, getting like a brand, all that jazz. You can definitely work with a freelance branding artist and branding consultant for a lot less than going to a firm.
It wasn't like a firm, but like if you could get someone on the development team, let's say, to.
Oh yeah, they have those skills definitely. If they have like graphic design skills, if they've done that kind of work, absolutely. Yeah.
This is my last one, I'm sorry.
Oh no, don't worry. That's why you're here. That's why I'm here.
I don't see a lot of indie games marketing directly to other countries besides their main markets, and that's understandable because there's a lot of costs and time into things like translation and localization and whatnot.
Not to mention like the various nuances of also like marketing to those regions as
Sure.
well, because there's also like, you know, because like not just localization, even like linguistic differences, like things
Sure.
that may even get taken out of context, like when you translate them, for instance. And,
Right, and
yeah.
cultural difference, yeah, the whole nine. But it's a big world. There's certain markets that we're ignoring to some degree, or are there untapped? I mean, obviously, I know that there's a lot of reasons not to do it.
Yeah.
And in the time limitation that you have, or the budgetary limitations, or just the expense of how much a small group can do, totally understandable. But obviously, there are a lot of people out there nowadays that play games, so maybe
No, that's a
there's a way
fantastic
to think
question.
differently in terms of the world at large.
Yeah, no, well, one thing I would definitely start with, and this is like easy, either free or very cheap to do, is that so when you have, a website set up for your studio, look at your analytics, look at where your traffic's coming from. Look at what countries, what regions have people staying the longest on your pages. That's like you can just do this for free with like Google Analytics. But then it's the same deal when you also see, like, you can just use like MailChimp. I know that one's free up to a certain number of subscribers. I use Campaign Audio both for Himalaya and for Sonic Toad. But you also want to take a look at who's also signing up for your mailing list, who's following you on social media, or if you already do have games out on Steam or itch.io, look at the analytics of where these people are located, because that definitely will tell you hey, because for instance, we were actually surprised when I was still at Himalaya and we were looking at, who was buying our games. We were actually surprised to see that we had a pretty sizable fan base in Korea. We hadn't expected that. And, because those analytics will tell you things that may surprise you. And so because that was predominantly adventure games, I did see a lot of the countries I expected to see. I know that adventure games are always bigger, in the UK and Western Europe than they were in America. So I wasn't shocked to see, the UK, France, Germany, Sweden, topping our list. But then I was really surprised to see 30% of our players were in Korea. And then because that definitely then tells you hey, this is a market I should definitely be tapping into, or this is the country I should prioritize for localization. And so that's definitely something I would start with, when you're looking to market to other countries. Since there's so many in the world, you want to focus on the ones giving you traffic and giving you money. So I would definitely start with those.